Now, as we promised, the NPP has started a press conference at their head office. We can go there now for all the details.
Hope that our team that we cherish so much will pick up the old days and the old victories. And it is going to be a victory not only for the Black Stars, it's going to be a victory for the New Patriotic Party, and going to be a victory for Ghana. Friends of the media, ladies and gentlemen, we have invited you here today to first express our shock and our outrage at the NDC's sudden U-turn, to now announce that they will be campaigning for a no vote on the upcoming referendum to amend Article 55(3) of the Constitution. The amendment is to allow political parties to also freely contest in the local government elections and administration, and for voters to be able to hold political parties directly accountable for their stewardship at the local level and not just at the national level. It will be recalled that on Tuesday, we've just been joined by the Deputy Minister for Local Government, Honorable Obi Amwa. You recall that November 12, 2019, the National Democratic Congress urged Ghanaians to vote against the proposed amendment. According to the party, yes vote will further polarize the nation, particularly local communities along the lines of NPP NDC, and will likely lead to the creation of NDC communal labor and NPP communal labor, as well as NDC market and NPP market. Unfortunately, this flies on the face of the informed wisdom that it is rather the winner-takes-all culture of the existing structure that is largely responsible for the tensions between the two main political parties and the gradual marginalization of minority parties in Ghana, which get worse election after election since 1992. The President of the Republic of Ghana, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, in the supreme interest of Ghana, heeded to the growing calls of the people to trade in the power of the President to appoint all MMDCs, for them to be elected directly by the people through the amendment of Article 2431 and related provisions. Ending this requires the support of 2/3, that's 66.7% of all members of Parliament, with the ruling party, the New Patriotic Party, controlling 169, that is 61% of the 275 seats in Parliament, and the opposition NDC holding 39%, that's 106 members of Parliament. President Akufo-Addo was absolutely clear from the word go that we could not achieve this without the support of the NDC. So he made conscious effort to build the basic ingredients of this important constitutional exercise. Directly linked to this, ladies and gentlemen, so as to make the devolution of power complete, the government began the process of paving way for political parties to openly sponsor candidates for elections at the district assembly level. This means that Article 55(3), which says that political parties are free to participate in shaping the political will of the people and sponsor candidates for elections to any public office other than to district assemblies or local government units. That political parties who are responsible for shaping the destiny and managing and mobilizing for support and for the running of this country can sponsor all candidates for all elections apart from district assembly and local unit elections. This is what our constitution says. Except only through a national referendum, as it is an entrenched provision. Amending it requires a referendum in which the voter turnout must be at least 40%, and that at least 75% of vote cast must endorse the proposed amendment if it is not to fail. Again, the president was under no illusions at all about how this could be achieved and made conscious effort to build a foundation for this exercise as well. This press conference, ladies and gentlemen, seeks to state the position of the New Patriotic Party on the upcoming December 17 referendum and to particularly address the unfortunate complete U-turn by the NDC. This press conference will conclude by making a strong case for yes or a yes vote and call on the NDC to return to the consensus table where we all started and were proceeding together purposely towards December 17th. Indeed, and in fact, until the announcement last Tuesday, the NDC had all this while been cooperating constructively with the government in Parliament and elsewhere. The NPP, the Electoral Commission, other political parties, faith-based organizations, traditional authorities, civil society organizations, and all other stakeholders for the success of the referendum in returning in an emphatic yes verdict. This they have done throughout the many engagements, conferences, symposiums that have been held on the referendum involving all major political parties in this country. That is why all the political parties, civil society groups, the media, and the general public all appear surprised, confused, and even hoodwinked by the NDC abrupt U-turn last Tuesday, barely 5 weeks to the referendum of December 17. What the NDC displayed last Tuesday was nothing else but an unpatriotic betrayal of the Ghanaian people. Such a naked show of dishonesty, deceit, indecision, lack of conduct and integrity from the biggest opposition party in the country projects a perception that the NDC will sacrifice the national interest at the altar of rather where chief political points are to be scored. There's a strong school of thought, ladies and gentlemen, that the only thing that can explain the NDC unexpected U-turn is that they are fully aware of the difficult task of getting the amendment through without a consensus. They are aware that it will be difficult for us to get the amendment through without a consensus. They knew well, or they knew very well, but pretended they were in favor until this last minute, when huge state resources have been committed into such an important exercise. By urging their supporters to vote no, the NDC, by this frivolous game, hopes to register a curious propaganda victory as we enter election 2020. Let this be clear, or let this message be clear, and let it go out to every household, ladies and gentlemen, that as far as the New Patriotic Party is concerned, a yes vote is not about the New Patriotic Party, and certainly not about the NDC. It is about what is good for Ghana, what is good for governance in our country, particularly where it matters most, at the grassroots level. Surely the NDC are not saying that after 30 years, the current system of local government has delivered in terms of accountability, quality of service, its overall impact on the nation's development. It was never the intention of the New Patriotic Party to make partisan political capital out of this, and it will never be. There's no inherent advantage for any party but for the Ghanaian people and the quality of leadership and public service they get from their local governments. That is why we began on a platform of a consensus, and it cannot be said that this entire constitutional reform exercise is to benefit one political party to the exclusion of others. Indeed, it is rather the current status quo which favors one political party, or at best, two main political parties, to the exclusion of all other political parties. If partisan advantage was the intention of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and the New Patriotic Party leadership and its rank and file, We will not have selflessly spent the last 3 years convincing our rank and file and across the country that letting go the powers of the president to nominate MMDCs was the right thing to do. If it were for partisan reasons, the president and his party will not be leading this exercise to give up on his constitutional powers to nominate all chief executives of all assemblies. It is rather the winner takes all system that is at the bottom of much of the acrimony in our politics. The NDC position on the referendum until now. On April 18, 2017, President held a historic meeting with the 3 living former presidents, namely President John Jerry Rawlings, President John Agyekum Kufuor, and President John Dramani Mahama. Top on the agenda was the election of MMDCs and the introduction of multi-party democracy at the local government level. The positive responses from the 3 former leaders gave the nation what we all saw to be a solid platform to building consensus. The consensus process began in earnest just after that meeting. For example, on August 16, 2017, IDEC, which had been championing this constitutional reform for the past decade or so, organized a one-day seminar on establishing multi-party local governance in Ghana. The leader of the NDC and former Minister for Local Government, Samuel Ofosu-Ampofo, who happened to be the national chairman of the NDC, who also was the one who led the no vote charge on Tuesday, gave a strong endorsement on behalf of his party to multi-party elections at the district level. These are the people we are talking about. On all the various discussions that civil society groups have had consultation with political parties over the last few years, nowhere did the NDC give any hint of being fundamentally against electing people at the local government level on partisan basis. They hid it from the Ghanaian people. We are curious to know why, after making declarations at national and public fora and engagements, including the Catholic Bishops' Conference, several forums organized by the civil society organizations, particularly IDEC, and the launch of coalition of CSOs, the launch of citizens education and awareness campaign by the NCC and the Information Service Department, among others, the NDC is now going back on their word and pledge. In all these engagements, ladies and gentlemen, we have referred to, some of which were held at the behest of the Center for Democratic Development and the Institute for Democratic Governance, to whip up political party stakeholder support for the referendum. The NDC, just like the NPP and the other political parties, made their positions very, very clear, to the effect that they were for the introduction of multi-party contests at the local level, and that they were willing and ready to get their supporters to campaign for a yes vote in the referendum on December 17th. The NDC maintained that they were convinced that amending Article 55(3) of the 1992 Constitution to allow political parties to sponsor candidates for election into the District Assembly and lower government units was the way to go if the nation really wanted to strengthen decentralization. The NDC had also participated in all the 10 regional and national consultations conducted by the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development on the referendum in 2018. During which meetings the party maintained its position, that the NDC maintained its position, that it was in support of the amendment of Article 55(3). As for amendment of Article 55(3), there's no dispute at all in all the engagements we had with them. Ladies and gentlemen, please permit me to highlight a few examples as this is a very important conversation on the destiny of Ghana's governance structure and development. On October 12, 2019, IDEC organized a forum on the theme Reforms, Benefits, Cost and Participation, MMDC elections, and the 17 December 2019 National Forum, Referendum, chaired by the chairperson of NCCE, where the NDC boldly reiterated its support for a yes vote. The General Secretary of the NDC, Johnson Aseedun Ketia, is a former MP, so he may like me to add a honorable to it. In his speech, which was applauded by all, re-echoed their support. This is one of the topics, I'm quoting, this is one of the topics that is in quote, one of the few topics that both the NDC and the NPP seem to be in agreement. So I will not want to, as usual, I giggle a little. I will not want to talk too much about the advantages of having multi-party elections at the local assemblies, he said. Aseedun Ketia's speech continued. We are urging all our members, and we have asked all our members to also go out and vote for yes when the opportunity presents itself. This is Aseedun Ketia speaking. As for the assembly elections and involvement of political parties, the Honorable Ameyaw Chireme has pointed it out clearly. It is true that even though these elections are not partisan, when you get out to the grounds, it is the political parties we are conducting primaries. No, let me take it again. It is true that even though these elections, that assembly elections, are not partisan, when you get to the grounds, the political parties, we are conducting primaries, we decide which individuals will best represent the interests of the party and all of that. I think that our democracy will become more meaningful if we take the devolution process properly to the grassroots level and ensure that we have a multi-party election and accountability that can also be ensured. So the NDC is fully committed to the process. We'll encourage our members to vote a yes. But once again, in conclusion, we are urging all of you as our social partners to join us in our effort to ensure that the Electoral Commission in its conduct ensure the right things are done so that we can have a free and fair election. This is Aseedun Ketia speaking. A video of this speech is available, and it is their Deputy National Youth Organizer, Eric Edemagbana, who read this on behalf of the General Secretary. It was the same General Secretary who on July 12, 2011, made a curious claim at Sunyani that the NDC won over 60% of the seats in the 2010 non-partisan district assembly election. What this does is make everyone aware that there's a fiction and all political parties hide behind non-partisan election of district assembly members, which allows parties to evade accountability and for public service and development at the local level to suffer. Again, another meeting was convened by IDEC on October 25, 2019, between the two main political parties. The minority side was led by the second Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Honorable Alban Bagbin. Minority Leader, Honorable Haruna Idrisu, Majority Chief Whip, Minority Chief Whip, Honorable Mohamed Muntaka, and other ranking members. The majority side was led by the Majority Leader, the Minister for Parliamentary Affairs, Honorable Chairman Sabonsu, the Chief Whip, Honorable Ameyaw Chireme, and Chairman of the committees and other members. Again, at that meeting, the NDC leadership gave no hints that they were to soon make a U-turn. Instead, the two sides, and this is just October 25th, instead the two sides in Parliament reach a consensus on the critical issues on the referendum and the passage of Article 2431 with the promise to brief leaders of their respective political parties. Ladies and gentlemen, broad-based consultation have followed this process all the way through. On June 10, 2019, a meeting was held at the Jubilee House for a comprehensive deliberations on the referendum. There too, all political parties were in agreement on voting yes. At that meeting, the NDC was represented by its General Secretary, whilst the PNC was represented by Bernard Mona. Other stakeholders were also represented during the meeting. The NDC raised no dissents, but rather fully consented to the amendment process and supported the campaign for a yes vote. Just last week, Kofi Akpaloo, founder of the Liberal Party of Ghana, who was present at the Jubilee House, described the NDC no votes campaign as a betrayal to a collective decision made by political parties to solicit for a yes vote. This is not limited to their leaders outside Parliament alone. Let's go to Parliament. This positive position for a yes vote taken by the NDC was not only consistently articulated by its national executives and other leading members, but also the party's members of Parliament on the floor of the August House. The NDC minority in Parliament worked in close collaboration with their majority counterparts to amend the relevant constitutional provisions to make MMDC's position elective ahead of the referendum in order to further strengthen the case for an overwhelming yes vote at the referendum scheduled December 17, 2019. The two sides were even planning to go out there and campaign together. For the records, ladies and gentlemen, we wish to, at this juncture, quote what some of their leading members said on the floor of Parliament during the second reading of the amendment bill and the broader issue of involving political parties in district assembly elections and administration, as captured by Parliamentary Hansard of July 29, 2019, which is available for your perusal. The minority leader, Honorable Haruna Iddrisu, said, "So, Mr. Speaker, two principles: amend the Constitution, allow for proper elections of DCs, but do it on the principle of partisanship." This is the minority leader speaking. Without that, it may be difficult to support it. I'll take that again. He was positioning his party or leading his party on two principles on this matter. He said that amend the Constitution, allow for popular elections of MMDCs, but do it on the principle of partisanship. Without that, it may be difficult to support it. Honorable Mama Ayariga also added, "Mr. Speaker, let me reiterate the position of the minority that we support the amendment to the Constitution to allow MMDCs to be elected by universal adult suffrage. We do support that, but we also request," this is a demand he is making, "that this should be doable with the sponsorship and support of political parties, given their strategic role in organizing our country." He even went further to even state, which I have not put, I'll go there, that if political parties are capable of electing the number one man, the first gentleman of our land, that is the president, why can't political parties be able to sponsor candidates to elect assembly members, unit committee members, and our MMDCs? This is a very profound statement. Haruna Iddrisu again eloquently highlighted hypocrisy in the matter by stating that, "Mr. Speaker, the pretense must end. All of us here know that clandestinely. The political parties support district assembly elections in Ghana. Let us resolve this issue as a country, whether or not political parties have a role in local elections. In countries such as Cote d'Ivoire, Kenya, Nigeria, Senegal, and South Africa, they work on the basis of partisanship. So we support the principle, and that is a major policy shift for our political parties. This is the minority leader speaking. The minority chief whip didn't want to be left out of this massive support for partisanship at the local level. So he quickly also jumped up and asked the question, if the referendum on Article 55(3) fails, then what happens? He answered himself by stating that it means that we would open ourselves to elections with our limits, just like the current arrangements, where we all pretend that the district assembly election is non-partisan, when in actual sense, all of us, in the sincerity of our minds, know that people and parties are behind one candidate or the other. This is Honorable Muntaka speaking. As if that is not enough, Mama Yariga came in again. And I quote, I think the consensus in this House is that we amend our constitution to provide that district chief executives be elected into office. From the report of your committee, is referring to the committee that worked on it, it also appears that there is an arrangement that further steps to be taken so that the election to district chief executive position will or can be on the basis of partisanship with all political parties or with political parties sponsoring candidates. It does not appear to me that there is any dispute regarding the consensus on these two issues. There is a political bargain here. We in the minority support the election of MMDCs, but we are asking for it along partisan basis. This is the political party. This is just last week. Concern raised by the minority and how same was addressed. In the discussion, they raised some few concerns, and these concerns were addressed. And let me go through some of the concerns and how they were addressed to their satisfaction. The only concern the NDC MPs expressed was why all the consequential provisions were not consolidated together with Article 2431 of the Constitution for amendment. But even with that, their fears were allayed by the executive and MPs on the NPP side, who gave them the strongest assurance that a bill will soon be presented to Parliament to take care of all the consequential amendments in order to operationalize and smoothen the implementation of Article 2431 amendment. Also worthy of note is that the process for amending Article 2431 is almost complete. And so any attempt to incorporate all the consequential amendments into the bill now will mean the bill has to be withdrawn from Parliament entirely. The process to start afresh and will take us not less than 3 months. I think that they were smart. They knew that when they asked for a comprehensive presentation of all the consequential clauses, you have to withdraw and it will take you 3 months, and that will come after the December 17th. This is the kind of opposition we are dealing with. The election of MMDCs, ladies and gentlemen, is not going to be held this year, 2019, or in 2020, but the earliest will be in 2021. Hence, there's still ample time to amend all the consequential provisions in the 1992 Constitution, as well as to undertake a holistic review of the nation's local government law, the Local Government Act 2016, Act 936, and other relevant pieces of legislation to conform with the new realities occasioned by the amendment of Article 2431 and 55(3). All these have been clearly outlined in the roadmap towards election of MMDCs, which was launched by the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development in July 2017 with the media in attendance. And I think that the roadmap is somewhere here. I'll show it to you. It was launched in the open, the NDC was there, the whole Ghanaian public was there, and all these details were also detailed out there, and the NDC was aware of it. The roadmap states clearly, as part of the post-referendum activities, that if the referendum result is in yes verdict, Parliament shall approve the amendment bill to Article 55(3), which shall then be followed with all the consequential amendments, including Article 2483, Article 242, Article 248, the Local Government Act, Act 936, the District Assembly Elections Act, Act 473, the Security and Intelligence Act, Act 526, the Political Party Act, Act 573, and finally, a development of a policy framework and the guidelines pursuant to the new laws to guide the entire process. The NDC's U-turn and breach of faith. Having consistently spoken publicly in favor of the amendment of Article 55(3) and thus throwing their support for the referendum, as we have demonstrated already, the NDC press conference of 12 November 2019 was most curious. If it was calculated to confuse, then it has succeeded. But surely, is this how an opposition party led by a former president eager to appeal to the electorate for another chance to behave? Of thought that the only thing that explains the NDC's U-turn is that being fully aware of the difficult constitutional requirement that at least 40% of electorate must show up and at least 75% of these who to vote must cast in favor before such an entrenched position can be successfully amended, the NDC want to take undue, unpatriotic and selfish advantage of that. Thus, they are merely playing politics by hoping to register a curious electoral victory by actively mobilizing their supporters to vote no. Indeed, our information is that the NDC intend to use referendum as a dress rehearsal for the 2020 general elections. As far as the NPP is concerned, a yes vote is not about New Patriotic Party, and certainly not about NDC, but it is about what is good governance in our country, particularly where it matters most, at the grassroots level. Surely the NDC are not saying that after 30 years, the current system of local government has delivered in terms of accountability and service and its overall impact on the nation's development. Nobody is begrudging the NDC for having a change of mind, but not by weaving a web of distortions and falsehoods, and then on the basis of that suggests that it is rather the ruling party that had acted in bad faith. Responses to their claims that government is deceiving the public that the referendum is about the election of MMDCs. It is never true that government has sought to deceive Ghanaians into believing that the referendum is to elect MMDCs. All stakeholders has been clear on the agenda that the president was giving away his appointing powers to allow the electorate to vote for their own MMDCs, and linked to that is to allow parties to also freely contest. These messages have been clear from all informed stakeholders. There's this question about government not being transparent in the process leading to the referendum. Throughout the process, ladies and gentlemen, government has made it clear and very clear by way of public education that the burden to elect or not to elect MMDC was now being shifted from the executive to parliament by approving the current bill to amend 2431 presently before parliament, which shall require at least 2/3 majority of MPs. voting in favor of amendment. Citizens can do very little on that because the amendment is clearly before the August House, which is seized with the competent jurisdiction to effect the amendment. However, the decision whether or not to elect MMDCs on partisan basis requires the approval of citizens in a referendum, which is all that December 17th referendum is seeking to achieve. President Boadu, who is at the forefront of this national exercise to strengthen local governance, has on several occasions made a strong case for amending 243 and 553 in an atmosphere of sincerity and candor. Indeed, among other things, his statement on the state of the nation in Parliament on February 8, 2018 confirms this position and also demonstrates his unwavering commitment to the election of MMDC and the referendum on multi-party democracy in district-level polls. There was this question about the process being shrouded in secrecy. Again, contrary to the NDC claims, that the process leading to the referendum have not been shrouded in secrecy. First of all the process began with the development and launch of the comprehensive roadmap by the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development. This is the comprehensive roadmap that the Ministry of Local Government developed and was launched openly in the presence of all political parties. The ministry also conducted public awareness and sensitization meetings with relevant stakeholders in all regions of the country and at the national level, where meetings were held with all identifiable stakeholders, including political parties, the National House of Chiefs, the Christian Council of Ghana, Catholic Bishops Conference, Federation of Muslim Councils, CSOs, professional groups, relevant committees of Parliament, and so on and so forth. Also, through the help of the Attorney General, the Local Government Ministry ensured that all the constitutional requirements for amending entrenched position pursuant to Article 290, including a 6-month gazette notification and the laying of the bill before Parliament, were all strictly complied with. How more transparent does the NDC want the process to be? Through the Local Government Ministry, government has also provided funding to the NCCE to educate the public on the referendum. There's also this question about the fact that multi-party democracy is divisive and will destroy local government. I think that this long-held anti-multi-party democracy that's motivated people to take over governance of our country and made them to sleep 3 years in curfew and also 11 years of uninterrupted criticism of any government must cease. We've passed that stage. The argument that multi-party democracy brings division has been even resolved by the practice of multi-party democracy for the past 27, 28 years. If you check the development paradigm of this country and trace from 1957 to 1992, the kind of development that we talk in terms of growth, inflation, and our currency and the strength of our economy, and you compare that to 1992 to date, you see clearly that there's massive development between 1992 to date than in those days where the so-called apostles of democracy that does not believe in democracy was running this country. This is a fallacy, and all of us, because we know that the moment they take power and create an impression that multi-party democracy is divisive, it leads to rancor. They want to seize your rights. It is in those days that you don't have free media. It is in those days that you can't even criticize budget. It is in those days that you didn't have procurement law. It is in those days that all the incentives that we are enjoying as a country were not available. So it is something that they've held on, and people who want to continue to usurp the powers of the people have been using to hoodwink the Ghanaian people. And I think that we've come a long way in our history to continue to believe that lie. This message to the whole world that suggests that multi-party democracy is divisive, alien, and unsuitable for this country, especially at the local government level, is also surprising. But for me, it is not surprising because that is the antecedent of the NDC. It gives an uneasy impression that Ghana's main opposition party is not really committed to the liberal democratic journey, even though so far they are the biggest beneficiary after 16 years in office. But it is not surprising to me at all. The last 27 years of multi-party demo has recorded the best performance in most fields since the First Republic. But it is also true that the development has been very slow at the district level, especially where local initiatives are concerned. The current reforms should rather diffuse the NPP-NDC duopoly and acrimony, as people from different political parties are compelled by the electoral system to work together in their various communities. When these reforms are carried through, the smaller political parties should have greater opportunity to organize themselves at the most basic level of governance and be able to grow from local level to avoid the country heading towards a two-party state. Because it's clear that if political parties are sponsoring candidates for unit committee, district assembly, and MMDCs, political parties like PNC, who are very strong in Upper West, will get some MMDCs. Political parties like the CPP, who are very strong in some areas, Western Central, who used to be like that in those areas, wouldn't have been extinct by now. They will have galvanized on the support of their reps in government to strengthen their party. And this is something that I believe that all smaller, so-called smaller parties must join hands with the New Patriotic Party, and also all members of the NDC who also believe that some few clique of their leadership are the ones who are holding on to this old, held-on view about their anti-multi-party democracy administration should also join hands with us. Well, since we are in a constitutional democracy, it is within their right to campaign for no. But the NDC should not be disingenuous and deceptive in their campaign. There's no doubt that as we speak, some of their party constituency officers and polling station executives, as well as those of the NPP and political parties, are holding positions as assembly and unit committee members. Per their logic, do we have NDC market days and NPP market days? Do we have NDC communal labor days and NPP communal labor days in most of our districts, in most of our communities? Even if the person is an NDC assemblyman, he calls for communal labor. Everybody comes out. They also said that Boadu is trying to destroy the non-partisan local government legacy of President Jerry John Rawlings. I think that they must leave President Jerry John Rawlings out of this, because he eloquently spoke for introduction of multi-party democracy at our local government level. But being fixed at the corner, they just want to bring him back with the hope that he will sympathize with them going forward. But I think that will also fail. If multi-party democracy works in democratic states across the globe, what is so special about Ghana for it not to work? Ghana cannot be left out, not when we are touted as the bastion of democracy on the continent of Africa and beyond. It is also instructive to note that the need to select MMDCs in a multi-party democracy has been a popular cause since 2000. And more institutionally, the work of the Constitutional Review Commission in 2011, when their report confirmed that the good people of Ghana had expressed the desire to have their MMDCs directly elected on multi-party basis. President Akufo-Addo is seeking to implement the wishes of Ghanaian people as expressed consistently in various surveys. The Constitutional Review Committee's work that it did in 2011 proved beyond doubt that the Ghanaian people want the introduction of multi-party democracy at the local level. Then the president was not able to work on it. He died in July 2012. John Mahama, then the vice president, took over, and for 4 or 5 years he did nothing about it. And I mean nothing. I don't know whether it is part of his difficulty in taking decision, as he expressed in his book, my first book, Coup d'etat. The deficiencies and findings and surveys, including the comprehensive Afrobarometer survey of 2017 by CDD, which state that over 70% of those surveyed want election of MMDCs on partisan basis, have convinced us that there is the need to embark on a comprehensive review of political parties' participation at the local government level. Now, I come to the commitment of the president. President Akufo-Addo has, without doubt, selflessly demonstrated and continues to demonstrate, both in words and in action, an unwavering commitment to giving real meaning to the concept of decentralization and bringing good local governance to the Ghanaian people in a free and fair atmosphere. In devolving his appointive power back to the people in respect of MMDCs, President Akufo-Addo has thus far demonstrated that he puts Ghana first. This is an example we expect the NDC leadership to emulate. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is the consensus case for a yes. The New Patriotic Party will, nonetheless, still stretch a hand of friendship and appeal to our members or our brothers in the NDC, the second largest political party in Ghana, as at now. But they may go to third by the way they are behaving, to come back to the consensus table and let us together do what we know to be right for Ghana. We will appeal to the NDC to put the national interest first. The NPP is fully behind the president's program and the people's desire to democratize local governance and enhance accountability at that level. We are also happy to hear that the government intends to continue engaging the NDC and other stakeholders to get this important exercise of strengthening governance at the grassroots fully back on track. Government is still not relenting its effort in engaging the leadership of the NDC, irrespective of their U-turn. But because they can turn, I believe that they can turn again. We also call on all patriotic citizens, including followers of NDC and other parties, to do what we all know to be right and support the Yes campaign. We call on all other institutional stakeholders to also reach out to the NDC, particularly the presidential candidate and his party's leadership, to come back and support a yes vote. To reinforce that this is not just an NPP agenda, but a national agenda. In making a case for yes or a yes vote, we would like to quote from a civil society person, H.K. Prempe of the CDD. He stated at the weekend in relation to the governing party having its opposition winning some MMDC's elections. Both parties have work to do governing the country and can be judged and held accountable on their performance, not just nationally, but also locally. Why isn't it better to move away from our winner-takes-all politics and let local communities have the opportunity to have their preferred party to participate directly in government at the local level. This builds bridges of cooperation between parties, because for local development to proceed, the local and the center must work together, regardless of which party controls government at which level. Our winner-takes-all arrangement, where the winning party gets everything and the loser gets nothing to do but oppose, is a part of why our politics is the way it is. IDEC supports the participation of political parties in Ghana's local governance because it will promote inclusiveness and reduce the winner-takes-all system and polarization. It will also enable minority political parties to control some MMDAs and therefore give them a share in executive power at the local level, even as the ruling party controls power at the national. This is something that is done everywhere, apart from Ghana. At the local level, the political parties that are strong controls the local government structures on the ground, even though their parties may not be the national party. This is done everywhere, apart from the thinking of the NDC. This is done everywhere. They argue further that the quality of MMDCs and assembly members will improve because the political parties, with their own internal vetting and competitive processes, will scrutinize and bring out their best candidates for election as they compete among themselves. And this will also bring down the pressure and the continuous pressure on our MPs, that people of their party will also know that there is an elective position apart from competing to become members of parliament, and that there are other positions that they can also be accountable that have security of tenure. It is important to note that have security of tenure. We began this journey believing there was consensus, and we are still hopeful that all is not lost. The discussions will continue this week with stakeholders, and we'll do our best to put Ghana first. Finally, a yes vote will strengthen our multi-party democracy consistent with our constitution. A yes vote will strengthen our system of decentralized local government by providing a coordinated and organized political system. A yes vote, ladies and gentlemen, will provide greater opportunity for citizens of voting age to participate in political activities intended to influence policies at the local government level. A yes vote will meet the constitutional mandate imposed on political parties to freely participate in shaping the political will of the people, especially at the local level. A yes vote, ladies and gentlemen, will afford political parties the opportunity to sponsor candidates for district level elections. A yes vote will bring political experience and competence in the practice and management of political parties at the local governance level. A yes vote will promote better and organized control of majority of persons who will be elected and will govern through multi-party democracy at the local level. A yes vote will minimize the exclusion of smaller parties from the governance of our country at the local level. A yes vote will create the greater need for an application of affirmative action in our local governance system, and a yes vote will require political parties to mandatorily include marginalized persons for representation in local governance. Thank you for your attention.
That is how it wrapped up at the NPP press conference, where they sought to respond to the NDC's position on the referendum, where the NDC is encouraging Ghanaians to vote no. The NPP, of course, seeking an alternative outcome there, seeking a yes outcome in the December referendum.